Welcome everyone to my presentation, or perhaps I should say narration, as I will be using a PowerPoint presentation. To begin, the title of my presentation is an ethnographic study of culture in the context of organizational change. To address the question of why I chose this article, I found it to be complementary to my research interest. My research employs observation, so I was interested in reading an ethnographic research approach. Like my research, this research uses the SHINE's organizational culture model, which is my preferred model. It is used to identify assumptions and how they relate to behavior. And the study confirms my hypothesis that an organization culture develops historically and is internally coherent and has potent effects on attitudes and behavior. As an abstract, the ethnographic research approach uses a clinical element. The clinical element is a term I believe derived from SHINE's approach to explore the nature and the role of culture in the context of organizational change. SHINE's organization model identifies the cultural assumptions, values, and explores how they relate to behaviors, demonstrating how culture develops, showing historical and internal coherence. And it also illustrates researcher reflexivity and subject reactivity. This is useful in terms of understanding the construct of organization culture, and will be addressed in the lessons learned for change managers. As for the hypothesis, research questions and subjects, the central hypothesis was, in a sense, answering a question. Consultants will not operate in teams if they are evaluated individually, praised individually, and based on their own sales and performance. And there were two central questions that were asked in the interviews. Do regional directors select your training courses, or do you normally choose for yourself? And how do you think one rises in people associates? And finally, the subjects of the research were consisted of 104 interviews with consultants, IT staff, support staff, and past leaders of people associates. In terms of the methodology, I found Heraclius expanded on this more than most researchers and their research work. He identifies what he perceives as his own philosophical commitments, his methodological paradigm, his research strategy, and specifically the interviewing participant and non-participant observation, etc. As a result, he produced what he considered a list of governing assumptions of the people associates. Organizations' relationship to environment was seen as proactive and striving for improvement. Nature of reality of truth was established. Nature of human nature, nature of human activity, all of these were identified. As an example of governing assumptions and how they manifest in practice, we can extract the critical reflection as follows. Heraclius saw governing assumptions as the truth that was a combination of pragmatism and scientific knowledge. Scientific knowledge was, in this sense, respected and taken seriously, even if the source had little experience. In essence, what works in a specific context within the organization was or is pragmatically accepted. In the discussion, he draws upon this reflection to show that behaviors, values, beliefs, and assumptions are intimately interrelated. These governing assumptions can be supportive or in conflict with those of a change program. And finally, clinicians or trainers or change managers should identify these governing assumptions as to circumvent resistance and conflict when implementing change programs. In terms of practical application for trainers, there are three key points to learn from Heraclius' research. The first is subject reactivity, essentially how employees respond to interviews and how management responds to recommendation. Researcher reflexivity, in this sense, there is a symbiotic nature between the culture and the process, and the researcher is the central tool in the ethnographic research process. And then finally, ethnographic researchers struggle as the primary tool is both interpretation and collection, data collection, so that in this sense, the researchers themselves are the primary tool of the research. Realist ethnography is challenged by this emergence of what is called confessional accounts. And this represents a pivotal role in the role of a researcher in the process of inquiry. Specifically, subject reactivity, the examples that he indicated were that employees respond to interviews by engaging in what we would call self-promotion, in a sense, exaggerating their role and responsibility in a change program. This is based on the assumption that the employees may feel that the researcher has the ear of senior management and therefore will perhaps misrepresent their role and responsibility. Second, how management responds to recommendations. Heraclius suggested that management was readily willing to adopt the recommendations that were related to time, means, and content of communication, but challenged those recommendations, let's say, that challenged the cultural sacred cows were ignored. In this, as an example, the concerns of consultants were more readily addressed, while the concerns of support staff were often ignored. The key point in this is that to know that you should treat subject reactivity as a useful data source rather than something to be avoided. Validity and reliability, this is basically more of a definition that trainers should pay attention to, so that when they are ready to conduct their research, they address these concerns in terms of validity and reliability. I found many definitions of validity, but and reliability, but I constructed two definitions that I felt were easy to work with and conveyed the fundamental issue of both. In this regard, validity is the degree to which findings correspond correctly to reality based on probability, and reliability is the degree to which the results correspond differently to a time location based upon replicability. Finally, as a critique, I believe that if it's possible to make a positive critique, I found his approach and study both noteworthy. In this regard, in terms of his approach, as an ethnographic approach, he provides the excellent and thorough orientation of the organization. He provides the same in his description of the organization's culture, and he provides an excellent frame of reference of the subjects and their respective social realm. In terms of the study, he provides thoughtful and meticulous identification of assumption, discloses the flaws of research designed to explore or examine culture, and he provides a reflective explanation of why most change efforts fail. I hope you found this brief overview useful, and I look forward to your comments. Thank you very much.